Morning, members. Can you hear Member Michael Dudek and Member Therese Olo? Can you hear and see us okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. And officers at the City, can you see and hear us as well?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We're about to start the meeting. We'll be starting at 9:30 a.m. and there is no change to the order in the agenda.
That will be
Morning.
Come
It has
on.
now gone 9:30 a.m. and I would like to officially open today's meeting and acknowledge traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present on the land in which today's meeting is being held. The panel for today's meeting comprises two parts. Part B, the first part, we have Councillor Michael Dudek and Councillor Teresa Olo. We also have panel members. To my furthest left, we have Lee O'Donoghue, Specialist Member. To my immediate left, we have Clayton Heim, Deputy Presiding Member. My name is Francesca Lafanti, Presiding Member. We have a number of apologies for today's meeting. Those are listed in the agenda, but I'll read those out. Councillor Suzanne Migdale, Councillor Rebecca Coughlin, Councillor Fergus Bennett and Councillor Blaine Brackenridge, and they relate to both item A and item Part B and item Part C. There are no members on leave of absence. The minutes for this DAP meeting, as our other DAP meetings, will be available on the website. We are moving to Part B, City of Stirling item. Members, can I have a show of hands that you've duly considered all matters before you in relation to this item? That is unanimous for the minute taker. Members, are there any disclosures of interest in relation to this item? That is nil for the minute taker. We now move immediately through to presentations. We have two presentations followed by the officers. As everybody is aware, the DAP standing orders have changed and it's a 3-minute time frame for presentations. We have, as you've already seen today's meeting, members have indicated they have received and are familiar with all material that's been provided. You are encouraged to focus on the key aspects. The members do have all the material that's been provided. We will now hand over to the presenters. The first presenter here is Mr. Terry McCoy, followed by Mr. Chris Nolan. And you can change the order if you wish, just advise us if you're doing so. That's right.
Good morning, members and officers, and thanks for having us along. So my name's Terry McCoy. I'm the Regional Property Development Manager for Woolworths in our online business or customer fulfilment centres, as we call them. So it was really we just wanted to present. There's been a lot of questions from different jurisdictions around the country as to what actually is a customer fulfilment centre. It's a terminology that we actually use. For all intents and purposes, it is a large warehouse. Some people call them dark stores, some people call them warehouses, some people call them fulfilment centres. But we just brought along a few photos in case there are any questions regarding the application as to exactly what this project entails. We've got around the country, we have 7 facilities in total. So they're not scattered here, there, and everywhere, as some people may like to think. We've included in the pack just a few photos of 2 projects, one up in Rochedale in Brisbane that was opened 18 months or so ago in a development with Goodman, and then we've got another one just in Carringbar in New South Wales, which was delivered by Aliro for us. So the photo you can see there, that one there, Carringbar in New South Wales, that similar size facility. It's in a larger project that was repurposed. It was an old Toyota parts facility down in the Sutherland Shire. But again, we've just got some photos, internal and external, just to give people a bit of a flavour as to what it is. So a CFC, we receive bulk deliveries from one of our distribution centres via all of our semi-trailers. The orders are then picked and packed and delivered by any of either our own drivers or contractors. It is largely done primarily for larger next day home delivery orders, or we do some same day delivery, but by and large it's actually for large home deliveries. We do have a small direct to boot facility should people wish to collect, but primarily that is actually used by third party operators, which we call point to point, which is crowd operators. So be it Uber Eats or Deliveroo or those types of groups where you can get extra picked up and delivered to. The backbone of all of our online operations, though, is still our supermarket network, and will continue to do so. So this is really just to do a lot of the heavy lifting of next day home delivery orders. Any questions?
We'll have questions at the end of both presentations, but thank you. Is that the end of your?
That's really it. Yeah, by all means, we don't have to go through every photo. I think a copy of the pack was actually shared with the team, but you can see internally it is what goes on. People think, oh, it's a shopping centre. It's not at all. There is no customers at all inside these facilities. It is just for bulk delivery of goods and picking of online. So if you actually walk up and down through these racks, you would notice that to what you would find in a traditional supermarket where products are placed and how it's all displayed on the shelves. And it's really around ease of picking online orders.
Thank you.
No problem.
We will now take our second agenda before going to questions from panel members. Mr. Chris Nolan.
I'll keep it easy. I don't need a PowerPoint presentation, so I can break that out. Good morning, panel members. My name is Chris Nolan. I'm from Urbis. The applicant's for item 3.1 on the agenda, being a proposal for a warehouse, some showrooms, and a drive-through food outlet at lot 803 Alexander Drive, Mirrabooka. You've just heard from Terry McCoy from Woolies, who does head up the delivery of the customer fulfilment centres around the country. Terry lives and breathes these CFCs. Actually, it's probably not the right thing to say, but that lives and breathes these fulfilment centres, and hopefully you've got a clearer picture now of what these new facilities are, how they operate, and perhaps more importantly, what they are not. From a planning perspective, the site is zoned industrial under the MRS and designated mixed business under the relevant structure plan. So the nature of the uses proposed are entirely consistent with both the state and local planning frameworks. As noted in the RAR, we lodged this application back in Feb this year, and pre and post lodgement, we undertook a design review panel process with the city, which resulted in some built form and landscape modifications, and in particular, some improved screening and moving of some of the service loading areas. And overall, this was a really positive process for us. On the whole, we are very supportive of the recommendation before you and the proposed conditions, but as noted in our memo of last week, we are seeking a few modifications. Firstly, we are seeking for condition 8 to be modified to only reference the limitation of hours for waste vehicles and not reference service or delivery vehicles. Having a strong distribution function, Woolworths needs delivery vehicles to be operational at all times. Despite the land being zoned industrial and more than 500 metres from any residence, we've suggested, and I don't do this very often, but the provision of an additional condition requiring an acoustic report to ensure these out-of-hours delivery vehicle movements comply with the noise regs. I can't emphasise enough, out of everything today, how important this is to the functioning of this facility. Condition 9 is a request for a slight modification to ensure the primary intent of the condition is for lighting and safety. And condition 12 relates to lights built to adjacent residential properties, of which there aren't really any adjacent residential properties. Again, as I mentioned, 500 metres away, thereabouts the nearest residence. Condition 20 and 21 appear to be perhaps a hangover from the previous development approval on the site, which was issued in July 2022. As we outlined in our memo, the land in question, subsequent to this 22 approval, lot 803 the land has been subdivided, and lot 803, the new lot for which this proposal sits on, has been remediated and officially reclassified as decontaminated by DEWA. And we provided some supporting documentation from DEWA in our memo around that. Therefore, there is no need for these conditions 20 and 21, and we request their deletion. In the context of the memo and the requested modifications to the conditions, I understand the city has reviewed our requests and as of last night indicated their support, and I believe support back to the DAP Secretariat. That's all I wanted to cover off on today. Happy to answer any queries. Online we have Sam Austin from Watson Young, the project architect, who's a bit crook, but I think he's online. But Craig Wallace, legal counsel, like to always cover off on all bases, but yeah, happy to answer any queries. And Terry and Cam from Woolies are here as well. So over to you guys.
Thank you. Panel members, are there any questions for these first two presenters? Yes, Councillor Michael Dudek.
Sorry, I just needed to get myself off mute. Just regarding which condition is it? Condition 12. Just wondering, you've asked for this condition to be deleted. However, and you say it's because there's no residential properties. I'm just wondering as to how this condition will affect you if there are no nearby residential properties, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't provide any spillover.
Regardless, through the building permit process, the builders will have to comply with the Australian standard in relation to lighting. I think this is the additional words here are just about light spill. So we have to comply with the Australian standards. This was an extra over in relation to obstructive effects outdoor lighting, making sure that there's no light spill. And we say we have to comply with the standard, the baseline standard in any case. So do you need a condition for that? And then there are no residential properties that I would imagine you're going to have light spill given the distance. That was our rationale.
Thank you. That's the main question I had regards to that. Am I able to get a comment from City of Stirling on that, or is that do we wait till afterwards?
You can get a comment. We will go to the city officers at the full conversation. City officers, do you have a comment on that?
Thank you, through the chair. The city does agree with the applicant in regards to light spill. There's no adjacent residential properties. There's actually a large buffer between the subject site and any adjacent residential properties by way of bush forever, and all the surrounding properties are either industrial or commercial. The city has no concern about light spill affecting the amenity of any sensitive land uses.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillor?
No, that's all fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, panel members? If not, thank you. We will now move to city officers. City officers, do you want to provide any comments or response to what you've heard today?
Thank you. Through the chair, the development, which proposes a mix of land uses in several buildings over the development site, is appropriate in land use, built form, scale, and includes large setbacks to the street, high quality commercial facades, a surplus of car parking, and exceeds landscaping requirements. Thank you to the applicant for your cooperation in this application. So the city has provided an R13 response to the applicant's request to amend the conditions, and we have accepted all the proposed changes. That has been provided to the DAP yesterday afternoon. Notably, old conditions 20 and 21, which do relate to the landfill gas mitigation, have been confirmed by the city's environmental health team to be satisfied by the remediation on the site and are no longer required. Lastly, the city does advise that yesterday the submitter contacted the city to formally withdraw their submission on the development, which was addressed in the RAR. Due to the short notice, we didn't have time to amend the RAR to remove that submission, but just to note that. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, do you have any questions to city officers at this point? If there are no questions, we will be moving straight to the agenda. As you are all aware, we have at the beginning of the RAR, we have received comments from the applicant in relation to modification conditions, and we now have an alternate. We also have an alternate recommendation provided yesterday from City, which modifies and changes. As is the DAP standing provisions, we will go to the recommendation which is in the RA. The alternate is the one we received today. Sorry, yesterday, I beg your pardon. Is there a mover of the recommendation as it reads in the RA, at the beginning of the RA? For the minute taker, the recommendation in the RA lapses, no mover. We move to the alternate. The alternate was provided separately, and it includes the information relating to the amended plans, and the reference to the plan numbers in there relate to the amended plans document we received. Is there a mover of the what I'll term the alternate? Is there a mover for that recommendation? It is moved, Clayton Heim. Is there a seconder? It is seconded, Lee O'Donoghue. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, look, I'm more than happy to support the proposal with the changes to the conditions as proposed. Clearly, the proposal fits within the framework of the planning framework of the local authority. I don't think there's any negatives there at all. It is an appropriate use for the location, and from what I can see with the conditions imposed, it will operate well. For the comment.
Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
I concur with those comments. I think it is an appropriate land use, which meets the requirements of the planning framework. I think that the applicant and council, city officers have worked together to solve any outstanding issues, and I think the changes to the conditions are appropriate. So I'm supportive of the alternative recommendation.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers on the motion that's on the table? If there are no other speakers on the motion, I'll move back immediately to the mover for right of reply and close of debate.
No comment.
Close of debate has occurred. We are now going to the vote. As everybody is aware, we are dealing on the motion, which was previously referred to as the alternate motion. Is a recommendation for approval. All those in favour? Is carried unanimously for the minute taker. For the minute taker, it is 9:46. There are no further matters in relation to part B for the meeting, and we are now changing members and moving to part C, which is City of Nedlands.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning. It is 9:47 a.m. and we are moving to part C on our agenda. We have 4 members forming part of the part C, and those members, and I'll read out those. I've already given the apologies for today's meeting, including a number of members that were unable to attend who are from the City of Nedlands. To my furthest left, we have Councillor Kerry Smythe. We have Lee O'Donoghue, Specialist Member. Immediately to my left, we have Clayton Heim, Deputy Presiding Member, and my name is Francesca Lafanti. Members, can I have a show of hands that you've duly considered all matters before you on this item? It is unanimous for the minute taker. Members, are there any disclosures of interest? We do have one that's been provided. Would you like to give them?
Yes, I'll read that, thank you. This RAR was presented to the City of Nedlands Ordinary Council meeting on the 23rd of July 2024 under section 2.1.2 of the DAP Code of Conduct 2024. I acknowledge that I am not bound by any previous decision or resolution of the local government. I undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to any DAP application before me, which I will consider on its planning merits. I am confident to participate in the JDAP meeting impartially without any prior commitment or bias, and I will consider any application entirely on its merits. as presented to the JDAP.
Thank you. The interest has been provided. A full approval is granted for full participation on this matter, and that includes voting on the item. Members, are there any other interests in relation to this matter? No further interest for the minute taker. We now move to the item that is listed on the agenda, which is Thomas Street in Nedlands. We have a number of presenters here. We have 3 presentations, and that will be followed by officers from the city. Presentations will follow each other. At the end of the 3 presentations, there'll be an opportunity for panel members for questions. As everybody is aware, that is for panel members only during that question period, and we will then go through to the city officers. We will deal with the presentations in the order that they appear. For all those that are presenting, we have received your material that you've submitted to the DAP. It's all been reviewed, as has been indicated at today's meeting. Panel members have indicated they have read all material presented, and as per the standing orders, there is a 3-minute time frame, and as is the normal case, I will ask for assistance from the DAP Secretariat in terms of managing that time frame. We will deal first with as the order that they're here, Mr. Ken Perry.
Presiding member, I wonder whether it might be possible for me to present after the others. Only one of those in the agenda that I've been able to obtain has made a submission, Urbis. So I've got nothing prior to hearing them, and I may not get another opportunity to talk. I have several points to make about the Urbis presentation.
I'm comfortable we leave the order as we are. If there are specific matters that come out, I'm sure the panel member will ask specific questions if they require them. But I think the panel presentation can stay as they are.
Okay, thank you. I think for your consideration. This proposal should be refused. Here we have a situation where the planning regime is in transition, which means judgments really have to be made. What is in place is Nedlands LPS 3, where the height limit has been stripped away by capricious acts, in my view, from the Department of Planning. So there are no height limits for this zoning in Nedlands. The plot ratio limit, element objective, has been stated to me in writing from the Director General of the Department of Planning that this sets a limit. This new proposal is 20% over the limit. And the Director General used the word limit in his written response to me. We unfortunately have a situation where the developer has been caught by rising building costs. I get it. The 2022 proposal went through what's supported at council and after it was supported by DAP. The council and the RAR complained about its overshadowing, amongst other things, setbacks and a couple of other things. Now, what we now have is a report to consider, and remember the one from the deferred report is no longer has any merit or standing, I believe, that doesn't even refer to overshadowing. The RAR, and I said we have 2 members from the Planning Department Midlands there today, has a gross number of flaws in my view. And these are consistent flaws, however. It's a bit like a clock, which has stopped being right twice a day. It doesn't make their consistency doesn't mean that they are right. This proposal is not next to a railway station. It doesn't warrant any extra height. And yet the RAR and the applicants, including the submission from Urbis, has said that this is all about achieving commercial metrics, I think was the expression. And Urbis also say that this responds to the planning framework. Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't respond to the planning.
Start wrapping it up. We're at 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much. So I believe that there's a growing level of community backlash against the way the planning system is being operated. A recent conversation with a real estate agent concurred with the fact that she had lost faith in, she had no longer any faith in what was going on. So I ask you to please refuse this application and restore some integrity to the system. There is no planning justification for these extra heights and extra plot ratio, none at all, unfortunately for the. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Members, we are now going to our second presenter, Mr. Tim Dawkins.
Thank you, presiding members, councillors, presiding members, special members and councillors. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you again. I think hopefully this is relatively brief because we're back here from a deferral point of view, and I just want to quickly talk through the journey we've been on since the deferral. So the site itself is zoned mixed use RAC 1. There's a current improvement in place for 26 stories overnight, 26 dwellings over 9 stories. The deferral was for 29 apartments over 11 stories, and now we have a proposal for 27 apartments over 10 stories. Sean, the architect, will go through the design moves we've done to address the reasons for deferral. But essentially, we've removed the upper level inside, taken the story off the building, and relocated the amenities deck to a lower level. So we're essentially taking 2 stories off the building and 2 apartments. It's been a pretty long journey trying to make this proposal achieve both the requirements of the site as well as the planning framework. But we're really pleased now to have the officers released to the City of Nedlands for application. So turning to the reasons for deferral at the DAP meeting, to reduce the building height and plot ratio to make the scale ground more consistent with the design scale of the area, which we've done removing plot ratio from the building and 2 stories off the building. And then deferral reason number 2 is to make the vehicle access routes achieve Australian standards, which we've done. So there is now no issue with vehicle access routes; they're fully compliant with Australian standards. I'm all familiar with the site, but I just thought it's worthwhile as we turn to, I guess, what the substantive recommendation is in front of us, which is a recommended for refusal, created by the city elected members at the council meeting recently. It's just important to know what the site actually is, because it's the reasons for refusal are the height and bulk of the building in the development is not consistent with the desired future scale and character of the area. So I think, first of all, we need to remove the word height. We know that there is expressly no height limit on this site, and it's in the scheme, and that's what we're at. So it's really the bulk and scale which we're talking about. And we've done a lot of things. So in typical senses, you can say what a site is overdeveloped because you're buying screening materials and other things to try and make it comply with visual privacy and the shadow requirements. This complies. This meets all the requirements. So the base plot ratio of 3 is exceeded in the sense that we actually able to, through clever design, actually design it so there's no, we're not reliant on screening high level windows or anything like that to make the development achieve the compliance. The other part is the reason for refusal number 2 is kind of a bit taxing for me to get my head around, because it talks about the transition of the site. Now, the site isn't a transitional site. You can see here that it's in the middle of an RAC zoning. It's all the same. There's no transition foreshadowed in the scheme. There's no expectation of this lot on its own to transition, as the recommendation for refusal says. This building in and of itself is part of a cluster of buildings. And there's also part of the recommendation of refusal which suggests that this building will encourage tall builders elsewhere on sites which are zoned the same. I don't quite follow the logic of that. But the most important thing is the design review panel. And as you can see through the 4 reviews we've had, built form and scale was an enduring yellow. And so in doing the most recent adjustments to remove 2 stories off the building and 2 apartments, we're able to get the green light for all the aspects, including built form scale, which means the sites now, in the eyes of the panel, actually achieves all of those requirements. And I'll leave it to Sean to talk a bit more about that. Finally, conditions of approval, we don't have any issue. There was previously a condition on the approval that exists to have a number of apartments screened. We now fully comply with the R code, so that there's a general catch-all clause which we're happy with because we comply. We won't need screening, but we're actually been able to make the building fully compliant with all the screening requirements. So we're not developing that site. Happy to take questions now, or happy to follow after Sean.
Thank you. We will take our last presenter, Mr. Sean Vandenpol. Is that how you pronounce it?
Vandenpol.
Vandenpol. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Tim. My name is Sean Vanderpoel, Managing Director at Rad Architecture, the architects behind this proposal. Today, I'll begin my presentation with a general overview of the design before addressing the reasons for deferral and associated changes made to the proposal. As Tim's mentioned, the subject site is RAC1 zoned, with other RAC1 zone properties to the north, west, and south. The design draws upon elements of the surrounding context, including white picket fences.
Switch John on the screen.
Thanks. That's better. Great. The design draws upon elements from the surrounding context, including white picket fences and the civic language and materiality of the nearby UWA campus. This diagram shows the existing Nedlands streetscape character of landscape verges, white picket fences, and landscape front yards found along Thomas Street. Our design incorporates these contextual elements vertically up the building, extending the leafy street character of Nedlands and setting a design benchmark for future developments in the area. The design also features a marble podium facade inspired by the surrounding commercial and civic buildings. References for this design element were drawn from high-end fashion retail stores and luxury residential housing, both locally, shown in the top right, and internationally. The upper floors of the proposal feature delicate vertical battens to control privacy and add light and shadow to the facade, as shown in the accompanying design reference images. The surrounding Nedlands context has also informed the material selections of the building. These selections include feature marble cladding, vertical white battens, and dense vegetation. These design elements come together to create a unique, contextual, and elegant built form outcome, as shown on the screen here, which is the hero render and a close-up of the facade. Shown here is an image of the external entry with feature large format tile cladding to the podium, and the internal residential lobby shown here. On the 9th of May 2024, the Metro MIDAP resolved to defer this application due to 2 reasons, as Tim's already outlined. The first reason related to the proposed height and plot ratio of the proposal. To address this reason, the client has removed an entire story from the building, reducing the total number of stories to 10. This reduction in stories has also reduced the proposed plot ratio of the development from 3.85 to 3.64. The second reason for deferral related to the proposed car park access to the development and its compliance with Australian Standard 2890.1. Through extensive reworking of the proposed site levels, the revised ramp design is now fully compliant with this standard, with 6 metres of 1 in 20 or less ramp up to the from the site boundary. In addition to satisfying both reasons for deferral, the project team has also continued to engage with the City of Nedlands Design Review Panel since the previous DAP deferral. During this process, we have further refined the proposal and provided additional material to the panel, resulting in the City of Nedlands DRP giving the project full support across all 10 design principles at the most recent review, as shown on the screen. In summary, through genuine engagement and meaningful concessions by the client on height and plot ratio, the revised proposal has now been recommended for approval by the City of Nedlands planning team and has full support from the City of Nedlands Design Review Panel. Importantly, throughout this engagement process, the client has maintained the original design ethos and quality of the project. With only 27 residences, this project provides a boutique approach to residential development, and we request the DAP approve this proposal. Thank you for your time. The project team, which is at present at the moment, is Tim from Urbis, myself from Red Architecture, and Andrew from Plan E, who's the landscape architect. We're all available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, is there any questions from the first 3 presenters before moving to city officers? Yes.
Thank you. My question relates to the intent of the deferral, and on page, I think it's 699 of the RAR, there's a summary of what happened 31st of May and the 27th of June. It says that there's a reduction in height from 11 to 10 stories, correct? But in the next section where it talks about the vehicular ramp, there's a sentence that says this resulted in increasing the height of the overall development by 0.6 metres. So I'm just wanting an explanation of how reduced the height by increasing the height by 0.6 metres.
Sure.
It seems to me that does not diminish the Vulcan scale because the building's actually higher.
That's a valid question. So I think those two are both correct. So in the original application, we had 11 stories total. We have dropped a whole story, which is effectively between 3.1 and 3.2 metres per floor height. We also, so as well as the building being reduced by 3.1 to 3.2 metres, we also raised the building by 0.6 of a metre to make the entire ramp situation work. So that involved extensive redesign to basement to the building entry to get wheelchair access still to the building. Now, what that means is, I mean, quick maths, it means that the building has reduced in height by about 2.5 metres when we account for both of those situations happening. So I guess all of the information is correct, that those two things did happen. The net result is a reduction of 2.5 metres.
Oh, that's the net result. Okay, thank you.
That question. Thanks.
That sentence, when I read it, sounded like
pretty confusing. Yeah, depending on how it's provided the information.
So it's been reduced. Its height on the landscape's been reduced.
So as a reference point, the top of the building would be 2.5 metres lower now.
Okay, thank you.
That's after both things have happened.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from panel members at this point? If there are no other questions, we'll go to city officers. City officers, would you like to make some comments?
Thank you, presiding member. I think the only thing I just want to add is there were some in the written presentations provided to DAP, there were some inaccuracies about the previous application. I just wanted to clear up. The previous application in 2022 was approved with 9 stories, and it was approved with opposite recommendation for approval, and again, council recommended refusal. So it's the same situation that we have here today. Clarify that. Also point out that in the previous RAR for this application, when it was deferred, is that the RAR did discuss and foreshadow that there should be a reduction of 1 to 2 stories, and that would be dependent on how they treated that top story to reduce the apparent bulk and scale that's visible from the surrounding areas and where they could be.
Thank you. Any other comments you wishing to make?
No, this time.
Panel members, do you have any questions to city officers at this stage? Yes.
Is there any merit, in your view, in reasons presented by the council? They just seem to be totally at odds to the city's officers' recommendation.
So I think the council is looking at, what we're looking at is the Nedlands Stirling Highway Activity Center Corridor Strategy. So that is essentially a visioning document saying this is where we want the city to go. And that envisages a lower height for this site. However, it's not been, there's no statutory controls been in place for that. That's sort of the next step. So the idea is that this will be of a lower height than surrounding areas. I think what council is looking at is, from what I understand, is looking at the graduation height from Stirling Highway down to the R60 zones towards the south. And since this lot is sort of between 2 RAC1 zones, so it's in between 2 of the similar zones, there will be sort of higher buildings here. So there is a way to graduate down. So I think that is sort of addressing the number 2 in terms of staggering it across the block to provide an adequate transition down towards those areas. I'd also note that the lot immediately adjacent to it in the strategy does allow for higher heights. So this, in that respect, this additional height won't negatively impact that.
So if we go back to reason 1 of the council, they're saying it's not consistent with the desired future scale and character. Are they referring to this new document, which hasn't seen the light of day, but it hasn't been adopted yet? Is that correct?
So the document's been endorsed by council, so it's a standalone strategy by itself. That's what council is basing that wording on.
But in your conclusion, the RAR, you're saying that it does satisfy the desired future character.
Yes, because I think the way they've designed it, so it's a balance between the strategy, which sort of sets up the overall vision, and the element objectives, which are what we have to work within now. The way they've designed it is that additional height will be largely set back from all sides, so largely won't impact that streetscape presence.
So we're saying that we exercise discretion and look at it in a more holistic view, it would satisfy the future scale and character.
Yes, I think so. If you assume that everything will get built up as proposed, then it would be consistent with those transitionary.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Just on that point, so this sits in the middle of that zoning. So in some ways, development on the lot to the south would be expected to perhaps make how do I say this? Let's give up a bit of height, or you'd be looking for a greater transition down to the R160. Would that be a fair comment?
I think that'd be something fair.
Kind of carry that, not burden, but that requirement.
I think that would be fair, especially since those lots, it's 2 lots, but they're actually 1 lot, one single title. They are directly adjacent to a lower density lot, so they would have to respond to that as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions at this juncture? Yes.
Yes, I've got a question about the commentary that was provided by the property officers of the city regarding in the consultation being the neighbours where the city's library is. I just find that commentary to be written in so much in planning terms that I can't believe that it wasn't actually written by the planners. So can you tell me how that commentary was arrived at? Do you know the part I'm talking about in the document? It only discusses setbacks and actually provides what would be nothing but a planning comment. So how can that be considered as a commentary from an adjoining property? Explain that.
The neighbour, being the city, was consulted the same as how we would consult any other adjoining neighbour, being that a letter was sent to them. This is the response we've got. This was not written by planning officers at this
Wasn't okay. Thank you. And I just wanted some clarification, if again on this same point about put two reasons that has been provided after the council voted to refuse the RAR. This commentary was written, the reasons 1 and 2, by the planning officers, again, on behalf of the council. Is that correct? Who wrote these reasons?
Reason 1 was provided by planning officers as an alternate, as requested. Reason 2, I understand, was developed between the Director of Planning and the CEO. It has not been reviewed by officers.
Okay, so can you, given that the Director's not here, can you just elaborate on what is meant by the the part that says that it's staggered across the block to provide adequate transition in bulk and scale? How is it staggered across the block? Can you just explain? Because it's
this came out of council discussion, so I would guess that what they're looking for is that rather than have the one tower of 9 stories, that they would have, I don't know, maybe it's 7 stories here and 6 stories here, and spread out more across the building, across the site, rather than being taller. That would just be my guess from the wording. Just again, because this was something that was
so the Director of Planning has interpreted another way of doing this, because there's it could be staggered across the block. I'm just trying to work out what is being suggested by the Director of Planning that
I think
could happen.
I think it's suggesting that in order to get a lower height, you could make the building essentially wider. Bring the height down, spread the building out, so that it sort of steps down potentially towards to the south.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions too, or probably one really. As I've been through the RAR, I understand that you've made the assessment. It's really probably more of a yes or no, not necessarily a massive explanation. My understanding from your information is you've assessed it against the planning provisions that are in place now, and you have referenced a proposed amendment, but you provided little weight. Can you provide some response to that comment? And my understanding is that the recommendation, as sitting at the end of the RAR, references the planning considerations on this proposal against the framework in place at present.
So we have a scheme amendment that's in place currently that seeks to basically reinstate the acceptable outcome heights. So currently we have no heights in our scheme, noting that acceptable outcome height would be 9 stories as per the R codes, volume 2. The scheme amendment also seeks to change this lot to residential only, which this is consistent with. that scheme amendment is currently sitting with the WAPC, so we have no timeframe as to when or if it would be adopted. Hence why.
There's no feedback at this stage. Have you received any feedback in relation to, and this is going to the question goes to your comment in here about the weight that you've referenced in here, which is limited weight, to that given it's not imminent or certain.
So we've been speaking to the commission with it. I understand it is going up perhaps the end of this month to the SPC. There's been some back and forth about the wording changes, but overall they're generally supportive of it. But it's hard to say what will happen because ultimately it's the minister's decision.
Thank you. Another question?
Would you say that it's fair to say that the last sentence in the second reason of the councillors, which says it will encourage even taller development, is supposition and probably totally irrelevant to the determination of this application?
I'd say you could argue that, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to this proposal? If there are no further questions from panel members, thank you, officers. We move back to the agenda as it's required under the DAP standing orders. We will first move, we have two documents that are provided in the RA. The first is a recommendation at the beginning of the RA and the second is at the end. We will move to the recommendation at the beginning of the RA. Is there a mover for the refusal of the proposal as listed in the RA? It is moved. Is there a seconder for the refusal recommendation? There is no seconder. The minute taker, the motion lapses as there is no seconder. Members, we are now going to the recommendation as written at the end of the RA. Is there a recommendation for approval? Is there a mover for that recommendation? It is moved, Leo Donoghue. Is there a seconder? It is seconded, Clayton Hine. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Okay, so look, since this item came to us previously, and I know we should be considering this as it stands, I will reference a previous presentation and set of plans that we had to deal with. There have been significant, changes to the proposal in as much as the applicant or the architect has actually reduced the number of floors, the number of apartments. There are greater setbacks. There's increased landscaping throughout the development. The issue of the ramp has been resolved. Overall, I think they put quite a bit of work into coming up with a proposal that now is closer to the existing document, strategic document that council has endorsed. I'm also noting at the same time we had quite a bit of discussion previously about the status of Amendment 13, and it's certainly still at the WAPC and we don't really know what the outcome will be, and given the minister will make the final decision, I think that is something that we can't give a lot of weight to at the moment. I am satisfied that being the lot sitting in the middle of that zoning can carry the height and will not have a detrimental impact on the amenity. I don't agree with comments that have been made that this isn't a rail station. It is very close to a major transit route and very close to the CBD and secondary centres. So I am actually going to support this. I think it's been really nicely designed. My thoughts on this are buoyed by the comments of the DRP, and I think it's a worthwhile development that will, that whilst doesn't meet the strategic Stirling framework document totally, comes very close to it. So I'm supportive for those reasons.
Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't involved in the first round of this application, so I've cast fresh eyes over it. And I guess with due respect to some of the presenters, I don't think it's helpful to be talking about the operation of the planning system being broken or whatever. we need to focus on this proposal and this proposal under its current planning framework. It is an appropriate location for this sort of density. There is no doubt about that. The plot ratio, yes, it exceeds a number, but plot ratio in my mind has always been a poor planning measure for determining bulk and scale. As mentioned by the mover, the DRP has given it full support, and it is a good design for this location. I also note that the framework is in a change situation, but I agree with the first speaker, that it is not considered certain or imminent, and therefore I would not place too much weight on that. I fully support the proposal as recommended with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers against the proposal? Yes.
Yes, thank you, presiding member. I can't let the opportunity go to not say something about the future character of what is being attempted to be put in place along Stirling Highway. The City of Nedlands has for many years now been confronted with this ongoing problem of this uncapped height, and I've been to more than 30 meetings of this JDAPs over the several years, where we've been constantly encouraged to get to this change where we've got something in place that will cap the heights. The city has worked considerably. The planners, our strategic planners, have been working on this, and it's gone through all the hoops and has got to the department and is sitting waiting. And to be told that it means very little, it has no weight, when we've gone through the process over many years to get to this, and still it is not being given weight when it's imminent, I find really frustrating. It's frustrating the planning system, and the fact that the members of the JDAP from the council we can't even get enough people here because they're so frustrated at the system that no matter how often they turn up, what cases they present, what work is done in developing the policies, it doesn't make any difference. And I find it just really frustrating, and eventually the minister will sign this off, but this just cannot be a working system when we've got people not turning up because they see no purpose in turning up. And I'm not saying that's what happened today, but that is what is felt by those elected members who are trying to do the best for their community. So I'll end there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I will speak to the item. From my perspective, I am supportive of the proposal. I'm satisfied that the proposed development is consistent with the planning framework. I have, in reaching that determination, I have given due consideration to the information contained in the RAR, the submissions and the presentations today. I'm satisfied that the proposed scheme amendment 13, and whilst I note the provisions in the agenda refer to it as being not certain or limited at this stage, and therefore have classified a weight against it, from my perspective, the planning framework as it currently stands provides for discretion in a variety of areas, and that includes areas of plot ratio, height, those sorts of elements. From my perspective, this proposal is, whilst giving weight to Amendment 13, a limit of weight, Amendment 13, I'm cognizant that provisions around height are also balanced against a number of other provisions within the codes, which includes locational context and the other provisions that sit around that. I'm satisfied that a proposal of this height in this location is not so inconsistent with the strategic actions that are being taken by the city as to make it completely out of the realm of consideration within the framework that we've got, as well as giving the appropriate weight to the framework that's moving through. I'm not going to make any judgment as to whether or not the minister may or may not do anything. From my perspective, a maximum, the proposal in terms of 10 stories is, has been indicated in the RAR itself, in fact, by the officers themselves. They've referred to the proposal that we have before us as being a height of 10 stories, being considered to respond to the overall vision and objectives of the future strategy. So I think from my perspective, this proposal not only is appropriate under the current framework, it has reference to appropriateness under the objectives of the visioning exercise that's been undertaken. And there's also been comments in relation to its impact on surrounding sites. From my perspective, those are significant considerations in relation to this design, this proposal, and its current configurations we see before us. The wielding is well articulated. It's designed as a direct response to its local context. I'm supportive of the discretion that's being sought regarding the ground floor activity, in particular the residential component. And I'm supportive of the reasons and rationale provided, creating an interface at the ground level rather than having a non-residential element to it, as provided for in the agenda. Overall, I think this proposal is both appropriate in its context of this current framework. It's for the current framework, and locationally appropriate in its context, bearing in mind that it is adjoining other sites of a similar zone. So therefore, I think this proposal is appropriate for those reasons that I've given. Those are my comments. If there are no other comments, I move back to the mover for right of reply and close of debate.
Nothing further to add, except I would concur with your comments about the existing planning framework, which I think this current amended proposal comes close to. So I'm very comfortable with approving it. Thank you. End of debate.
Thank you. Debate has been concluded. We are now going to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 4-1. Has the minute taken got the vote?
3-1.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. 3-1. You are correct. In the numbers back. We now move to item 4, minute taker. Can we ensure that the vote reads 3-1? And you've got the approver again. There are no other items, Form 2 or considerations of SAT items. We're now moving to Part D. The items are listed. I have no comments on those. There is general business. Are there any members who have general business at today's meeting? There is nil general business, and I close today's meeting at 10:32 a.m.